On December 16, 2012, a physiotherapy intern in Delhi was forced, beaten, and tortured in a bus by a group of 6 men. 13 days later, she succumbed to her injuries in a hospital. Even after horrendous exploits, the victim was accused of her own assault by several groups. As a result of numerous appeals and protests, a committee was set up by the Indian government which looked at thousands of suggestions and submitted a report about the system's shortcomings, which led to legislative implementations. In the year 2006, a civil rights activist, Rana Burke, started a hashtag MeToo to spread awareness among survivors of sexual assault and to empower women through empathy and strengthen numbers. This movement erupted in India in 2018 when several victims began opening up. It saw an explosive action where hundreds of women shared their stories with the world through Twitter threads and Facebook posts. The muteness around the issue seemed to fade out. But are we doing enough? Why is it that even though the survivors speak up, there is minimum action from the society? Why is it that even after such strong laws against sexual assault, we are still a long way from a safe for women society? I feel that every time a person does not report an episode of misconduct, an assailant gains vigor. Consider the following scenario. Jane is a girl who was sexually assaulted by a relative named John. Jane did not tell anybody about this incident and silently moved on with her life. Years later, she came to know that her sister, Joey, was also assaulted by John. But unlike her, she opened up about it, which deprived John of his ability to gain power over someone else. Now, at this point, Jane realizes that if she would have that silence is a form of complicity and consent, that it was her silence that rendered John to continue with his assaulting spree. It maybe even encouraged him. If only she would have spoken up about her experience, her sister would have been safe. Now, there lies a possibility that when Jane was assaulted, there was not much exposure and acceptance as it was when Joey was assaulted. Is it that in today's world, girls come forward and speak up about their experiences? That's where we go wrong. According to a report by the National Crime Records Bureau, an Indian government agency responsible for collecting and analyzing crime data, around 32,000 cases of rapes and assaults were reported in 2017 in India. And in 93% of the cases, accused were known to the victim. Ironically, India is amongst the lowest in the world for the reported sexual violence rate. Yet, a crime against women is committed every 3 minutes. The country with the largest democracy and diversity in the world is marked as the most dangerous country for women by the Thomas Reuters Foundation. Many of the survivors are present here, sitting amongst us, yet we do not know them. What is the stigma that makes these people so scared that they choose to live their life feeling anguished and agonized instead of seeking justice? From my experiences and observations, I have found two main reasons for the stillness of survivors. First is the response of the society towards the survivors. And second is the efficacy and prosecution of the existing laws. We live in a constantly evolving society. The earlier ignorant society, which simply did not care about such crimes, has now evolved into an aware one. Most members of the community seem to discourage sexual harassment. If that is the case, then why are we not witnessing a drastic rise in numbers of cases filed against sexual assault? Is it because the assault has suddenly stopped? Is it because we are not educating our youth correctly? Or is it because in reality only a few practice what they preach? Earlier this year, whilst conducting Model United Nations conference in our school, we had a discussion over the Me Too movement. One of the delegates remarked that if women are being assaulted, then why don't they speak about it immediately? Why do they wait and speak about it months or even years later? What we fail to understand is that the emotional toll from a traumatic event like sexual assault can cause intense, confusing, and frightening emotions. Speaking about these emotions does not always benefit the survivors. According to some trauma psychiatrists, the reason for this includes shame, perceived stigma of being a victim, or fears of being blamed or told that the assault was somehow their fault. Speaking up about some of the most excruciating and grim times of one's life takes copious amounts of courage. This fact alone is enough to say that survivors of sexual assault are not weak as it is immediately assumed by the society. They are one of the bravest people you will ever meet. Treating them like victims is one of the poorest responses. They should be treated like the society treats martyrs, with respect and pride and admiration. Another wrongful response is victim blaming. It is the attitude which suggests that the victim, rather than the perpetrator, bears responsibility for the assault. Victim blaming is a major reason that survivors of sexual and domestic violence do not report their assaults. Comments like, she asked for it, or he didn't mean to do it, hinder us to move past this issue which has been prevalent for decades over decades. We support survivors to come forward so that we can help them. But do we really? If so, then how come terms like victim blaming, victim shaming, and judgmental societies have become a part of our everyday conversations? Why do survivors still shy away from revealing the identities of their perpetrators? We all know that humans are social beings. We prefer to live with families and in groups. This often means that we are assessed by a group. When a survivor reveals the identity of an assailant, the society starts weighing and shaming not only the assailant, but also their families and loved ones. The family members of the assailant continue to suffer an ignominious silence for no fault of theirs. Everybody is their own person and they hold the liability of their thoughts and actions. It is unjust to assess, and become judgmental about the people associated with an offender. So instead of jumping to conclusions and criticizing the survivors and perpetrators, the rightful way would be to provide them the opportunity of a fair and just trial. I believe that the superlative way to bring change is through the youth. Instead of following in the footsteps of our ancestors, we need to pave a new road. As Thomas Watson said, the ability to ask the right question is more than half the battle of finding the answer. We need to understand the necessity of asking questions. We need to instill courage in ourselves as well as a younger generation to fearlessly question the practices we do not believe in. The survivors have to speak up about their experiences, and at the same time, each one of us have to stop making assumptions and judgments about them. Providing the survivors the therapy and help to move forward in life is a potent line of action. More rehabilitation campaigns need to be launched where victims are taught to liberate themselves of the memories of their experiences. But we also need preventive measures rather than just remedies. According to National Crime Records Bureau report of 2017, the conviction rate in rape cases is as low as 32% at national level and even lower in the metropolitan cities of our country. Only when there are laws protecting both the actual survivors and the wrongfully accused perpetrators will we be able to say that we live in a country with a strong and just judicial system. Changing the current culture and climate is the immediate need of society. Moving beyond legal compliance and supporting survivors when they come forward is vital. We need to understand what sexual harassment really means. Stalking, making contact without consent, leering, staring, displaying offensive material all come under sexual harassment, while rape, child sexual abuse, and indecent assault are all part of sexual assault. But today, the only cases being addressed are the most egregious ones. We need to address all kinds of cases consistently. Reese Witherspoon once said, There remains what seems like an impenetrable wall of silence around violence, and we must all play a role in breaking this silence. But who will bring this change? Is it the government, the police, the judiciary, him? I say it's we and only we, the youth, who can and who will. With awarenessness, with fearlessness, with empathy, with education, with affection, and with love. It's we who can bring about this change as we are the harbingers, the change makers of tomorrow. Thank you.